And this is the board meeting for Wednesday, March 11, 2020, and it's 1300. I'd like to call the meeting to order, call the roll, and establish a quorum. And we'll begin with board members on my right.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Ken Marlborough. I'm a public member appointed by the Senate Rules Committee.
Good morning. It's good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Elizabeth Woods, and I've been appointed by the governor's office.
Also, good afternoon. There we go. Good afternoon. I'm Donna Gerber. I'm appointed by the Speaker of the Assembly as a public member.
Ann Salisbury, DCA Legal Counsel.
Michael Jackson, appointed by the governor in the faculty role, chair of the board.
Dolores Trujillo. I'm an RN, and I was appointed by the governor.
Trandy Phillips, Direct Care Provider, RN, appointed by the governor.
Loretta Melby, Acting Executive Officer for the Board of Registered Nursing.
Thank you very much. We've established a quorum. We'll move on to item 2.0 since we're on a tight timeline, and that's executive officer recruitment information.
Good afternoon, member of the board. My name is Nicole, and I'm the Chief of the Office of Human Resources, Department of Consumer Affairs. Today, we're here to talk about the recruitment for the executive officer. Can you hear me? You have to turn on your mic. I thought it's always on. It is. It's really loud. So with that, the board members have received the proposed duty statement. You also received a copy of the old duty statement for reference. And you received the recruitment announcement. I make some one very minor change on the flyer. What it is a template, and because the position requires a nursing degree, the last bullet on the template where it talks about the 4-year degree is no longer quite applicable because you already require a nursing degree for the position. So it's very minor. With that, today the board will be talking about review the duty statement, the proposed duty statement. The board will approve the duty statement with any changes or edit that you would like to add to it. The same go with the recruitment announcement. You will review the recruitment announcement and make any changes or edit to that before I can post them up. As far as the recruitment process, the board will appoint the 2-member selection committee. One of the things I really want to stress about the selection committee is that you will devote a lot of time during this process. You have to review application. You do have to design interview questions. You work very closely with me, set up time to do preliminary interviews, because at the end of the process, you want to bring at least 2 to 3 finalists in front of the full board for the board to interview. So you do spend a lot of time doing this process. Let me know at this point, would you like to look at the duty statement first or look at the recruitment announcement first?
How about the duty statement?
Absolutely.
And with that, Mr. Chairman, I do have a suggested edit.
Oh, go ahead.
And that is, I noticed that there's not a direct reference in the duty statement to the nursing schools per se. And I note that in our regulations, in 16 CCR 1405E, it says, implement and enforce all standards, including those set for schools of nursing, which include inspecting and evaluating schools of nursing and making recommendations on accreditation. I would suggest to the board that we add that to the duty statement in the appropriate section. I haven't actually, made the edit specific to the document, but I just wanted to suggest that since this language exists in regulation, that it made sense to me to put it in.
That would probably go under section G where it says other information.
So the board, at this point, if I can ask you to look at page 2 of the duty statement, there's a 20% licensing and continuing education. Can you review that section and see if it's sufficient to what you just suggest? If not, we can certainly add or remove text to it.
Is that the section that you, of the duty statement that you think this particular thing should be added to?
No, we have continuing education part in the 20% on page 2. So if you take a look at that, do you need a copy?
Hang on a second, I just need to flip through various,
That says
Technology.
licensing and continuing education.
Yeah.
So is that not
It's
the
not.
same?
No.
no.
So where do you
Where?
want to add
Okay, hang on.
your recommended language?
Mr. President, I would like to support adding this, so now let's just find the place we should put it. I don't think that the other things really address it, so let's find the place and put it in there.
Okay, hang on, I need to go. I'm just trying to get into the materials on my computer.
Maybe it should be a separate
What,
section.
what about legislation and regulation?
Maybe it should be a separate section.
Well, it'd be easier if you put it under one of the categories where the,
Well,
hang on.
How much time do you think the executive officer would spend doing this particular task that you just suggest?
It's Lori can attest to this. It's a significant amount.
Sorry. I've only been doing this for 2 weeks as of today. I could say that the majority of my time has actually been spent on that just because of the coronaviruses and dealing with clinical displacement this time. But I would say that it is a significant part. I would go so far to even say more than 10%, but maybe closer
Okay.
to about 15%.
Okay, so
equal
here's
to
my
the board
recommendation.
liaison part.
Yeah, thank you. Here's my recommendation. What you can do is look at the enforcement. Currently, it is at 25%. The licensing and continuing education, it is at 20%. Would you prefer to take either 10% off of the enforcement or 5% from the enforcement, 5% from licensing and continuing education, and make it the 10% for this part, for this task?
Does the board liaison need to be 15%?
Yeah.
Or can that be 10?
I would make that 10.
10
Okay?
for board liaison, 15 for licensing, 20 for enforcement. That way, the schools is 15%.
Okay.
I think that makes sense in terms of how things actually happen in practice.
So the header of the 15% for school, what would you like the header to be? Because you know each section has a header, for example, 15% licensing and continuing education. So at this 15%, what would you like for the header to be?
I'm just looking here at the existing language.
What's it called, Donna, under the, in the regs, does it have a header?
It doesn't have a header, but it says,
And is it in a category?
no,
No, it's just under authority of the executive officer.
Okay.
it's implement and enforce all standards, including those set for schools of nursing. So I think what the header should just say is nursing schools. And then we could use this actual language under that header.
Duty statement is about the task, so we'll have to make sure that we start out, for example, visit schools, review school, whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah,
Maybe nursing school enforcement.
okay. So I'm hearing it like enforce something for nursing school.
Okay, so I was just advised
Implementation and enforcement.
nursing schools, implementation and enforcement.
Of what? Of regulation?
Yes.
Is there anything else you would like to add to it?
No, that was it.
Okay.
Would you like to put that in the form of a motion?
I can,
I
well,
have one question regarding this. Does it part require the individual to visit the schools? So I need to make school visits, right?
well, no, the language that I would like put under the header is implement and enforce all standards, including those set for schools of nursing, which include inspecting and evaluating schools of nursing and making recommendation on accreditation. I can give you actually have that language in the
Yes,
document.
yeah, I think you sent that to me.
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, so just take that section E.
Okay, I can do that.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I would move to amend.
Before we do
Okay.
that, is there anything else the board would like to add or remove from the duty statement?
Let her make her motion first, and then we will ask if there's anything else, any further discussion.
Okay, I would move to adopt the proposed duty statement with the amendment that we have discussed regarding nursing schools.
I second it. Now, are there any other comments or suggestions from the board?
I have a comment. Do we need to include in that motion which the refinement she was talking about making? Where you were talking about, since they're already on our end, that they don't need the question about.
Oh, that is
Do we
on,
need that in the motion, or?
not yet. We haven't worked on the recruitment announcement.
Okay.
yet. Yeah,
That
that's
was
just the
different,
duty
yeah.
statement.
Thank you.
I have a question. Can you just restate what's the changes that you're adding to it? Do you have
Yes.
that? Thank you.
So I'm gonna need Donna's help. Page 1, 20% enforcement. Page 2, 15% licensing and continuing education.
No, I just, the portion that we're adding to that,
Correct.
I just.
So I'm gonna go down just so you can see how this become a 15%, and then Donna will help me with that part.
Oh, I see, okay.
15% nursing school, implement and enforce nursing school standards.
Correct. And then, hang on, I got to bring it back up again. Then the language will be implement and enforce all standards, including those set for schools of nursing, which include inspecting and evaluating schools of nursing and making recommendation on accreditation. And that's part of our regulation.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board members? Any public comment before we vote?
Come to this mic.
Sure.
Hi, good afternoon. Judy Corliss, a former board member. I had a question when you were discussing the degree. It's always been that they have at least a master's degree or higher. And the reason being is the executive officer has to know all the duties of all the programs, not just the ADN and the BSN pre-licensure. So even in the faculty and in teaching, we require at least a degree higher than the degree you're teaching. And in this case, to overall understand what's happening with the nursing schools, they should have at least a master's degree or higher. So that would be a master's, DNP, PhD. So that's a suggestion because I was on the committee for the last executive officer search, and we did have that language in there at that time. Thank you so much.
Any comment from the board members? What does the law entail for us adding that?
That actually.
Not on the duty statement.
Not on the duty
Not
statement.
on the duty statement.
It can be
That's
on
for
the recruitment. All right. Seeing no other public comments, I call for the vote beginning on the right.
Ken Marlborough votes yes.
Elizabeth Woods, yes.
Donna Gerber, yes.
Michael Jackson, yes.
Dolores Trujillo, yes.
Trandy Phillips, yes.
Thank you.
So now the second piece that we go over today is the recruitment announcement. You each have had a copy. A lot of this is a standard language that we use, but the board feel free to take a look at the recruitment announcement. What I would like for you to pay close attention to is the section where the headers say desirable qualifications and experience. And as well as the interested persons must submit the following. That is the fourth one down. So under the desirable qualifications and experience, if you have any suggestion or edit or comment, now is the time for us to do that.
Are there any comments from the board? Any changes or edits that you'd like to make? Anything additional? What about the degree portion?
For the recruitment announcement, under required licensure, we do list the requirement in the BMP.
On the last bullet,
Undesirable but not required.
Oh,
We can add the master's degree under the desirable qualifications and experience.
the last bullet on that, it seems that something has been left out. There's an and, is that refer to the and special requirements, or is it and there's something left out?
So we'll remove the last bullet. You would like to add master degree.
Preferred.
So I will ask possessions of a master degree is preferred.
Master's degree or higher.
Or higher, preferred. Does the law require the position be based in Sacramento?
All of our executive officer positions are headquarters in Sacramento.
So telecommuting it would be up to the decision of the board,
That is correct.
because that's what was done with the previous executive officer. She was allowed telecommuting on Fridays.
And I don't think that is
Because
something,
Louise worked from home every Friday.
but that's not something for me to discuss.
That's up to
because
the
that-
board.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
the board decision.
Making a motion?
I make a motion that we accept the recruitment statement with the changes of adding the master's degree preferred.
I'll second that.
Any public comment? Seeing no public comment, I call for the vote, beginning on the right.
Ken Marlborough, yes.
Elizabeth Woods, yes.
Donna Gerber, yes.
Michael Jackson, yes.
Dolores Trujillo, yes.
Trandy Phillips, yes.
As far as the advertisement for the position, once we post the recruitment flyer, we typically will put it up for about 30 days. And applicants will have the opportunity to respond to all the desirable qualifications that we listed out here that the board had just approved. Usually, they would put it on a statement of qualifications or a statement of interest. Does the board have any preference about how many pages of statement of qualifications that you think would be appropriate number? Because, I mean, the reason I'm asking that question, because some people are going to put 20 pages. And you probably don't want that. Usually, we ask that they don't go exceeding 4 pages. So we'll cap it at number 4.
That's fine.
Okay?
That as a motion.
We haven't voted yet, right?
You did on the,
Oh, we
on
do.
the master's degree, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'll make a motion that we limit the number of pages of qualifications to 4.
I'll second it.
Any public comment? Seeing no public comment, call for the vote.
Ken Marlboro, yes.
Elizabeth Woods, yes.
Donna Gerber, yes.
Michael Jackson, yes.
Dolores Trujillo, yes.
Trandy Phillips, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 2.3, discussion and possible action regarding board appointment of Executive Officers Selection Committee.
Yes. So this is required the board to vote on the 2-member selection committee. I'll turn it over to the board.
I've done this before, with the previous executive officer, and I'd like to do it again. So my recommendation would be to appoint the board president and a new member coming on, so we can have one in the north and one in the south. And I recommend Dolores Trujillo and me, myself, Michael Jackson.
I'll second that.
Are there any public comments? Any discussion from the board? I call for the vote.
Ken Marlboro, yes.
Elizabeth Woods, yes.
Donna Gerber, yes.
Michael Jackson, yes.
Dolores Trujillo, yes.
Trandy Phillips, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And last item, this recruitment will be posted. The selection committee will be responsible to make certain recommendation as far as if they have the authority from the board to decide it to extend the recruitment announcement to the news outlet, newspaper, or they have the ability to extend the application filing period beyond 30 days if we don't have qualified candidates apply. So that's another decision for the board to make on how much they want the selection committee to make that kind of decisions during
So
this
can we make a
process.
motion today to give that direction so we don't have to come back and revisit that?
Yes, yes.
we
Is that what you're recommending?
Yes.
You want to make a recommendation?
Yeah. I'd like to make a motion that we, basically what you just said, that we give the Executive Officer Search Committee the authority to modify the timelines, to modify the flyers and other information going forward on the job search.
Thank you.
I'll second it. Any public comment? We call for the vote beginning on the right.
Ken Marlboro, yes.
Elizabeth Woods, yes.
Donna Gerber, yes.
Michael Jackson, yes.
Dolores Trujillo, yes.
Trandy Phillips, yes.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for traveling down here to my city so far away.
Thank you. I will be reaching out to you when the job is posted, and it's probably going to be around Monday.
Thank goodness you guys came today, because yesterday it was pouring rain. Really bad
Well,
yesterday.
I want to thank Nicole for, expediting this, getting on our next meeting so that we could move as quickly as possible. So
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
All right. Moving on to, first of all, do we need to take a little bit of a break, or is everybody okay? Moving on to item 3.0, information only. This is a presentation by the San Diego Consortium, Coordination of Clinical Placements. Are they here?
They were not scheduled to be here until later.
Okay,
This part of the meeting was projected to last an hour and a half.
okay. All right. Well, shall we reorder the agenda and go into closed session?
Yes.
And then
Sure.
end up with public comment, so those that need to make public comment won't have to wait around too long. Oh, at this time, we're going to go into a closed session on item 4.0. We're going to reorder the agenda when the consortium shows up, and then we'll take that in the public comment later. We have a room, right? Thank you very much. We're resuming back in open session. Item 3.0 is informational only. Presentation by the San Diego Consortium, Coordination of Clinical Placements, and I'd like to introduce this person that's standing here before you take a little moment to appreciate her. She's responsible for me being an ER nurse some 22 years ago when I worked, and she hired me as a student extern at Kaiser, which was an amazing program. Thank you very much, by the way. Marlene Ruiz, she's so respected in this community. She has over 40 years of service in this community. 50 years as a nurse in this community. So,
Well, actually, if you're getting technical, it should be higher than that.
all these Kaiser nurses with all this experience here. Please go ahead.
Okay, can we bring the slides up?
By the way, we heard about an earlier presentation that you did from one of our members, Ken, and he was so taken with it that he insisted that we ask you to do it for the whole board.
Well, how wonderful. Thank you, Ken.
Quite welcome.
All right, well, next slide, Ann. We'd like to initiate our presentation with a differentiation between what we call the consortium and what we call Surveyed Link. And we started our process in 1996. And at that time, as Michael's pointed out, I was the director of education at Kaiser, and Ann was the director of the program at Grossmont Community College. And in that capacity, she was bemoaning the fact that placement was such a horrible chore, and I was bemoaning the fact that it took up a large portion of the time in my office, getting calls, returning calls, playing phone tag with all of the instructors. And just to remind you, at that time, all of the clinical instructors were finding their own clinical placements for their rotations in many of the schools. And so what we decided was that we would pull the community together and see what we could do to lessen the burden on both academia and also service. And in doing so, we had a couple focus groups. We had a focus group with all of the people from academia, and they gave us their druthers, what they would like to see in a program. And then we had a focus group with all of the service providers, and they gave us their druthers on what they wanted to see. And we put together a compendium and had a joint meeting and ironed out the overlapping differences that we had. And then with that information, we formed the consortium. So our consortium here in San Diego and Imperial County consists of a representative from each one of the schools and a representative from each of the major healthcare systems in the county. Our meetings are twice a year, and we average about 50 to 70 people at the meetings. And the reason it's such a varying difference is sometimes only one person comes from the agency, and if there are hot issues, sometimes we get 5 and 6 people from one of the schools or one of the agencies. And so we meet semi-annually. We discuss issues relating to the preparation of the next generation of healthcare providers. We have always been vested in public service. We started off with a little bit of grant money, and we keep our prices at the bare minimum. We are very much interested in students, and our goal is to do workarounds whenever we can to make sure that what we accomplish is to the benefit of all the students that we serve. And can give you figures of how many that has grown to be. And it's astounding to a lot of people that we can do as much as we do accomplish. We're also very concerned about the schools, and we want to make sure that as things change in healthcare, that the schools are appraised of what the changes are, and that the two collaborate together to make the best outcome of what we can provide, what we can jointly do to solve issues that impact both areas. And so one of the issues that we've been discussing is the clinical issues that have just been coming up recently, and we're starting to get a lot of messages on our message board about the coronavirus and how that's going to impact student placements. And so one of the things that I think we should really consider seriously is increasing the percentage of simulation. The schools now use the simulation that they have very adequately, but sometimes we have emergencies come up in the service areas, and for one reason or another, students aren't allowed on the clinical site, and so then the school has to hustle to find out where they can place them. If they've already utilized their 25% of simulation, having added access to the simulation labs would be a good opportunity for them in that capacity. That would be one example, but there are a lot of things that the students will never see in the clinical arena. And if they were able to see those in simulation, it would be to the advantage of the student because they would learn more. It would be an advantage to the agency because they would have a prior knowledge, at least at a definition level of that situation. So that's the next thing that we as a consortium are going to start to discuss and start to look at. And with the crisis that we're facing right now, it might be a really good time to think about it. So with that, I'm going to talk over to Ann, and she handles the ServEd link component of this, and that's the web-based program that we developed to use for the clinical placements. Ann?
Thank you for having us today. I have a little bit of a cough. I don't have the coronavirus. I haven't been tested, but I'm sure it's not that at this point. But ServEd Link has been going on since 1996. We started off way back as a cut and paste Word document, and we've gone through all those things. And now we've moved to the next level here, and I'm going to show you, as I say, 1996 we started. We went from Microsoft Word to Microsoft Access, and since November of 2009, we have been on the web. And we've been fortunate to have a wonderful webmaster that has set up a program that has stood the test of time. And so I'm going to show you some of the things that go on with the program. We are trying to, let's see, I think I went the wrong way maybe. I want to show you the stats. This is what's happened in San Diego this year. We have 136 member nursing and allied health programs that are submitting requests to the consortium. And we have 140 non-local programs submitting requests. And that really consists of a lot of these online programs that are schools, back East Coast schools and all that send preceptors to San Diego. And the idea, the agencies wanted to have everything in one database. And so to have everything in one database, we had to set up a process where we could put those in where they didn't have to pay an institutional membership to be actual members of our group. And I can address that more if you have questions afterwards. So this year we had 5,355 nursing requests and 2,286 allied health requests. We have expanded, and because we've been asked to do other projects, and I think Loretta indicated that you wanted to know where else we have projects. And so we have the San Joaquin Valley Nursing Consortium was the first outside project that we set up, and they had 1,029 nursing requests and 1,065 allied health requests. And I'm showing you these figures because you'll see that we're pretty big in San Diego compared to these other sites. The Greater San Antonio Healthcare Foundation, strictly nursing, and they have 1,885 requests this year. The Nevada Board of Nursing is a little different in that the state of Nevada wanted us to do a project for them, and rather than do it for the whole state, they'd, Northern Nevada and Southern Nevada are two different worlds. They could be two different states. None of the students from Southern Nevada go to Northern Nevada to do affiliations and vice versa. And so the site is able to set up this so that they can have all on one site, but they can choose Northern Nevada or Southern Nevada sites and do their clinical scheduling that way. And the board there, it's the nursing educator on the board of the state of Nevada who sort of, I will say, administers it, but her administrative assistant does the day-to-day manipulation of the website and handling of clinical requests and the training and all those kind of things. And now, right now, I'm in the process of setting up Orange County, Long Beach with their scheduling. And both Orange County and San Antonio had used another scheduling program before. And as I was mentioning to someone in the audience today, they originally had scheduling programs that were ones that did not look at a lab group when they were trying to do their scheduling. They were scheduling, if you had 4 areas to go to, you were going to float students to a emergency department or to the respiratory therapy department for an observational day or anything like that. That was a separate request. And so as a school, you were worried that your whole lab group wouldn't get approved. And so I pulled those together, both in Orange County and in San Antonio, into lab groups, because that, the nursing educators in the crowd here know that that's the way to go to the hospital, as a lab group. And so that's what's going on right now in Orange County, and they're just in their first round of approvals. The agencies right now are in the process of doing their first approval, and so it's going to be interesting to see how things go. But so far, so good. We had a conflict resolution meeting, which we have in each of these sites. After the schools put in the requests, then they can look at the conflicts, because the system picks up where the conflicts are and tells you exactly what day, what shift, and all the school that the conflict is with. And so then we have a meeting at each of the sites where they discuss it, and the different sites handle this differently. I just talked to the people in Nevada this morning because they're having a conflict resolution meeting this Friday, and they do an excellent way, conflict resolution meeting, in that the agencies come to the meeting as well as the schools. And so if they have a day overlap or something, maybe the agency, and rather than have them change their schedules, the agencies say, oh, I can manage that with that one day overlap, and so that's okay. Whereas in San Diego, the schools come alone, and they try to settle their differences of scheduling. And that's the same way with Orange County. We just had one on the 21st of February in Orange County, and I think they anticipated there was going to be more problems, more It's a dog-eat-dog world out there and trying to get clinical schedules settled. And it was a very peaceful meeting, and several people said afterwards, I can't believe we really all were playing in the same sandbox, which was wonderful. So that's a little bit of how we handle those at the different sites. And each site has its own administrator on the local level, and I provide the support for them if they need any backup. And I'm the person who intervenes between that site and the webmaster if they want a new export, or if they have a complaint or something happens to the system, which almost never happens. But I'm the person that then deals with the webmaster rather than have everybody else sending him messages and all. So I'm going to skip this slide, and I do have a handout I'm going to give you, and I'm going to come back to this at the end, these two slides here, and show you this is the dashboard for the live site in San Diego right now. And if you notice that we have it set up on the left side of the board are the numbers, and it shows you the nursing. And if you people in the audience want to move down this way, you'll be able to see better, I think. But the nursing, the current year, and we have a scheduling year that starts with anything with a start date between August 1 and July of this year and July 31st of the following year. So that's how the numbers of the current year are. And now we're moving into, so August 1st, it'll be the next year figures. And as you see up there right now, almost 3,000 nursing requests for the next year. And then the allied health, the current year, and the next year. And I've added an option here that can be added to the site of non-clinical, because we have a lot of people that do job shadowing. A number of the high schools send students in. And I thought that the hospitals would want to be able to capture that on the web. But if you notice, it's 000 up there. They have not done that. They seem to keep it in another database or whatever. But that could be medical school students. It could be any kind of students you wanted to put on for another category. And you can add more categories across there. The other thing that is very critical, especially right now in this crisis we have with the coronavirus, is that they're able to post messages. And as soon as they post a message on here, they can decide if they're going to post a message to the administrator, they can post it to me, they can post it to just the schools, just the agencies, or to everybody. And so I'm seeing I get the emails from all these sites, and all sorts of messages are coming out right now. And this one, I think on here that I'm trying to see the exact thing that it says on this one, but this one is talking about the fact that, and my printout is too small, but on Thursday, March 5th, the primary employee parking lot at this hospital is going to change. And so they're telling them right away to the schools that this is where you need to park because of that. Now I'm seeing also ones come in from hospitals saying that we're not going to be sending any students into isolation rooms, nor to the emergency departments, mainly because they're going to use up our resources of our masks and all that sort of thing. And then I'm seeing now some schools, I saw a school this morning posted that they are going to they've added another compliance thing saying that the students have to fill out a travel document to get their background checks cleared, because now they want to be sure that the students haven't been traveling somewhere. So this is the best thing happening right now to communicate information to everyone. It doesn't show on this, but at the bottom of this column, there's also a place where these schools it's called public comments, public calendars. And the school, if they're looking for a place, they can filter down and find out at, say, Kaiser on 5 South, how many requests are approved, how many are pending for that site, and what days they are, what shifts, and so they can find an open spot possibly to look at. So that's the opening page of this. And now I'm taking you to the grid. And the grid gives a lot of details about the report, about the requests. And you're seeing everything that's green indicates it's the last person that's responded to this. So anything that's in the agency column that's green means the agency responded last. And if it's the school that's highlighted, then it also shows you what they changed of the fields that are on that grid. So they can quickly look at that. Then there's on the first column, and I apologize to people in the audience because you can't see the fine things on it, but on the ServEd link number in the second column there, it can show you if it's a request that was approved last year. There'll be a little R there, and there'll also be an R over in the third column from the right that says prior year, and that tells you that this was a rollover from last year. It tells the agency, well, I approved these last year, and if I didn't have any problem, hopefully they'll honor a historic request. And then the other thing that can happen on that ServEd link number, besides the R, is that there can be an asterisk there. And that means that the school sent in a late request. We have the schedule of when you're supposed to have put in the requests, when we're going to move them to the agencies, and when we're going to receive preceptors' requests and on like that. And so if somebody sends in a late one, we think the hospital should know, the agency should know that this came in late, and maybe you'll honor the ones that came in on time first. But that's certainly, every agency has its own way of doing things. Then there's a column, the next column is a status column, and the status column tells you whether it was rejected, approved, or if you notice on the fourth one down, there's a C after the approved, but that means there's a conflict with somebody else. So that triggers the agency to know I approved somebody, but there's still a conflict there, whether maybe it's a conflict they can live with. Maybe it's not a conflict, and maybe the two groups will get there the same day and they'll say, oh my gosh, I made a mistake. We hope that doesn't happen. The next column is the clear. It says CLR, and that means, and all the agencies don't use this, you see only a few check marks in there, but they can use that if they get all the paperwork in, the background checks are clear and everything else, they can put a check mark in that column. The next column says official, and if you see, there are all check marks down in that official column right now, and that is what triggers whenever the hospital, well, I'm going to back up a little bit. When the school is doing their input, data input, they have a work area, which is we call the unposted area, but once it goes out onto the web, the hospitals don't have a hiding area except for the fact that they can do things and not make them official. So the schools are not, any action they take, the schools are not getting any kind of feedback of emails or anything like that. And they can look at it on the web and say, oh, they must be working on that, but it does not mean that they're actually, it's not in stone until the hospital puts a check mark in that column, and once they do that, it sends out emails then to everybody that's connected with that school that is in the database. So then the next column, it talks about the type of request. The next one, the agency. The next one, the school, specific clinical areas, and then it breaks it down into the number of students, the total number of students, the number that are in the primary group, where the instructor probably is, the number of floats, and if it's a preceptorship, how many students, and then the start, end date, et cetera, and the course number. And all these fields are searchable, and you can also, by clicking on the top of any of the fields, it will alphabetize it either reverse or either way on that. Now, if they want to have a detailed grid, the other one just told you that this group had a float area and that there were 2 students there. But on this one, if you look a little, about 2/3 down, you'll see where they want to go to a certain floor, and then underneath it, it says where they're going to float to. So this even gives you more details than the other grid, but you don't have to look at this grid if you don't want to look at where the float details are. And incidentally, any of these things, they can go up to the top and click the printer icon up at the top and print off exactly what it shows on that sheet. Lots of filters. They can filter for the specific agency, for a specific clinical area, for a specific type of clinical request, whether it's a preceptorship or a primary group, for a specific date range. They can search for a particular course, and we tell them, put in your course numbers consistently. Don't leave a space after your NURS space and your course number. If you don't do it consistently, then you're not going to be able to pull the course easily. And also, if there's a field for the student names. If you wanted to filter for a student name, you can just type it in that search field up there at the top on the upper right, and it'll pull up every student that matches that name. So it's helpful if you needed to find where a student was at any one time. You could do that. A lot of hovers, and it's pretty hard to show those on the screen. But if you hover over the SurvEd link number, it will show you the last things that were done on the request. And if they put a comment in, it'll show you the comments that were made. If you hover over a C for the conflict, it'll show you the conflicts. If you hover over the number of students, it'll show you, if they put the student names in, you're going to see the student names that way. And if you hover over an entry, there's an update history. And I think it'll show up on one of these slides here. The update history, every time you save something on this, it puts your name on this list. And so I get calls and say, well, I didn't do that. And I'll say, well, let's just look at the update history. And sure enough, you go to the update history and you can hover over their name. And sure enough, it tells you exactly what they did. So, there's words for that, what that means. But anyhow, this is the new request screen. And so you can see from this that they can put in everything that an agency would want to know about this request. And we started off with just having one clinical area they could request. But with the changes in the hospitals, it came to be that they'll say, well, it only can be 4 students on this unit and 4 students on that unit. And so then the lab groups had to get divided down a little bit more. And so then they had to we put in clinical area A, clinical area B, clinical area C, and clinical area D. I don't like it when they use 4 clinical areas and put 2 students on each clinical area, because as a nurse educator, that means that the instructor is running around on the stairs or else she's hiding in the cafeteria all the time because her students are everywhere. And so I like it when the hospital can accommodate students at least 4 on a unit, so that you're only having the instructor move between 2 units, and then you have much better supervision, and I think it's much better for the liability for the hospital, et cetera. So then they can put it, if they do the drop down on clinical area A, it will list every option that's at that hospital. And it's very specific, because if you happen to call your hospital the emergency room, ER, and somebody else calls it the ED, it's going to show ED for your hospital and ER for that other hospital. And so then you have all these possibilities of where the student may go. A start and an end date, and we put a calendar function there where they can click on the calendar and it brings up the calendar, because they'll say they want to go on Tuesdays, but then they don't pick a Tuesday, they pick the first day maybe that the semester starts. And that's not what they want on this. The hospital wants to know the first day the student is going to be on the unit. And so that's why we have both the calendar function that you can look at the exact day for that year, and also then you kind of double check it by saying what day you want them to be there. The start and end times, and again, we tell them on the unit time. That is not when you're in pre-conference and post-conference. And then there's another field there that says how many groups of students for how many weeks. And we're kind of backing off on that right now because with a lot of this onboarding that's being done, like American Data Bank and everything, they want to know, they want it divided down, and the hospitals want it divided down, because if you say 2 groups of students for 4 weeks each, then it's, well, which students are here now and which students are going to be here later. So we're encouraging people to do a separate thing for each group. And then the type of student that's going to be there, and there's a long drop down of, there's many types of students these days. And then after that, the course number and what the focus is. So it helps the agency if they have to move a student group somewhere that they know what really the focus is. And then I'm going to go on down to the next part of the slide here. And then there's a place for them to put in the student names, a place for the middle box there is for the comments that everybody will see when an email goes out, whereas the bottom box, they can have internal comments. School might put in, I still need an instructor for this class, but it's something that doesn't go out to everybody. And then the float areas are listed here, the possible float areas, and they can put how many students are going to want for each of the float areas. And then down at the bottom, they can add attachments here. On the left side, it says add attachments, and if you click on add, it will take you immediately to your browser, and you can upload anything you want to add or that the hospital requires you to upload. And on the bottom right is that update history that I mentioned earlier, that by hovering over your name there, it will tell you exactly what you did at that time. This one is to show you what happens when there's a conflict. You see up in the upper left-hand corner, it tells you there's a conflict with this one, and it gives you the very details up in the upper left of what the conflicts, who the conflicts are with. And so that's what they work from. And before we have a conflict meeting, each of the administrators puts out a conflict report, so you have something to work from besides this. Calendars. A lot of the agencies are very anxious to be able to show a clinical unit, what students they can expect to come to this. And this is a calendar that shows you, this happens to be for 3 North and 3 South at Alvarado Hospital. And you can see they don't have any students in March on Sunday, Monday, or Saturday, but it gives the details on that, which leads me to tell you that you can have different kind of readers and users in the website. The advantage, you can have people that make the decisions, and they would be a full user, but the people that are agency or school readers can access the website, they can look at things, they can generate reports and everything, but they can't make any changes. So the advantage for agencies is they can have a lot of readers, and Scripps is the biggest one for readers in San Diego. I would guess they have 100 readers because they want their unit managers to have reader access so they can look at a calendar like this or see what's going on. Whereas they have their assignments for their full users to the managers of each of their 5 hospitals, and so they would be the ones that have those. But you can be very specific, and if you wanted to find out if your float area is an emergency department, I could have put in the emergency department, and it would show the emergency department just who they're going to have when. And this is, many exports are available. This is the one that I have been sending out to the new people in Orange County, Long Beach that I'm working with right now. This is an export that will, if I put in a date range, which I put in for them, I did 2 of them. I did one for the fall semester, And it shows you every unit that that hospital has available on the website for students. And then by day of the week, it will show you where where the students, where they're asking for requests. And I went through and highlighted on this one all the days, dates, and shifts just to get them used to using this thing. But so as soon as you see like 5 South, if I saw 2 requests in that 5 South on Tuesday, I'd think, uh-oh, I better look at this and see if the shifts overlap or what's the matter that there's 2 on that in that clinical area. So that's an example of one of the exports. There's a number of exports that you can have. And then this is the kind of email you would get when you have an official response. Well, this happens to be an unofficial response to this one because it says that this thing is pending, but you will get a printout like this on your computer that says exactly what's going on with that request at this point. And there's always a link at the top of it that you can click on. And if you have the website open at that time, it'll open up right to the edit screen and show you all the details of that. And it's these emails that are generated once the agency puts something official or if the school makes any kind of changes. So that's the contact information for us, but I do have a handout that I can give you that goes over some of this information that I showed you. I'm going to go back up to those slides that I told you I was skipping. This one. We have password protection for the agency and school users. It's user-friendly, intuitive screens. I think you can see that from what I showed you. Agency-specific placement options, personal work area for the school prior to releasing their requests, advanced sorting and filtering options, export capability from filtered data, and you can just do all sorts of filtering. You can dive down very deeply. Identification of conflicts and scheduling, including details of the conflict, the transfer of the school's request information so agency does not have to re-enter the data. And I didn't have a slide on this, but when you look at once it's been out to the agency, there will be 2 sides that come up on your screen, the school side and the agency side. Well, the agency can look at what the school said, and if they like what the school said, they just push a copy button and they move everything from the school side to the agency side, and then they can tweak whatever they want to do if they want to modify it or whatever. But it's no additional data input unless they want to make a comment for them on that. Personal work area for the agency prior to making the responses official. Ability to approve, revise, deny, or cancel requests. Fields to enter public and/or internal comments. They can create calendars of any of the filtered data. They can see get the official agency responses. The message board, I think we've talked enough about. It's easily expandable to other disciplines. Ability to roll over ongoing requests to the next planning year and updating dates. Ability to customize release dates. We can set when the agencies, until the schools have the conflict meeting, I can block the agencies from responding because the schools are still manipulating the data. And then when I put a release date for the agencies, then they can start responding. They'll have just a view access at that point. And basically, of course, ongoing technical support, and we will, the institutional membership fees are determined by the local agency. We don't say anything other than what we do. We charge for the support for the year, but, and that's pretty minimal. We charge $100 a month to be your support service for the year. And at this point, they pay $100 a month for the server fee. That's the only expense that they're, once they get set up. And then the schools, we have a institutional membership plan for schools and agencies, and that can be determined by whatever group uses the site. And the local administrator can add users, schools, agencies, types of students, clinical areas, restriction dates. It's all controlled by each of these groups of what their calendars are. So I'm open to questions if anybody has any questions.
Information back at the end, so we can get it. Your information on the bottom.
Oh, go back to that slide. Okay, we'll go down to the bottom. There.
Great, thanks.
Yes. Any questions from the board?
Questions from the board, please.
Yeah, so just circling right back to the cost issue, did you say how much the school and agencies each pay?
We prorate that.
So
And Marlene
roughly,
coming up here too. We
Ballpark.
prorate that. Do you want to talk about how we do it, Marlene?
We prorate the agencies based on how many service sites they have. For example, Alvarado Hospital has one hospital, so they pay the minimum fee. Sharp Hospital has 5 locations, and so they pay that fee times 5. The schools are prorated by the number of students. So if they have less than 100, there's a fee, and if they have greater amounts, it's prorated to the number of students that they have in their program.
and my other question is, so in San Diego, for example, how did you get all the schools and all the agencies to agree to participate?
We did this through our focus groups up front. When we had the focus groups, we asked them, was this something that would be valuable to them? And of course, we had an overwhelming yes. We standardized the placement of students to one person or one department per campus and one location per agency, so that it narrowed down. They didn't have to hunt for nursing supervisors. They didn't have to hunt for faculty. So it was narrowed down to the numbers. And when both of them saw the reduction in hours that it took to do this system, everybody came on board very rapidly. When we initiated this, we only set it up for the public school systems. And then we rapidly were approached by everyone in the community to join into the process, and willingly went open-doored to allow everybody to participate. We have agencies in town who choose not to participate, and if they choose not to participate, they're back to their old paper pencil systems that they had before, and that's their prerogative. We don't require that they participate. We just require that if they do participate, they pay the institutional fees.
What's interesting when she says that is that several of the agencies that are participating say this is the only way we'll take our clinical requests. We don't have any backdoor things coming in. And they lay down the law. And I always say the agencies, have the power, and they can say that. The other thing is that when we started this with our fee schedule, several of the hospitals says, you're not charging us enough, which was like, this is amazing.
Our charge system is based on what our expense program is. So we have a fiduciary agent that handles our money. They receive all of our revenues coming in. They pay the necessary bills that we have. And we try to balance it to a zero with a plus a couple $1,000s every year so that we have some reserves. But we are not in it to make a fortune. We're in it to serve the public.
And you were starting it sounded like in Orange County?
Yes.
We're just expanding.
Orange County, Long Beach.
Starting, so in that situation, are all of the agencies and all of the schools?
Everybody's not on board yet, but I have a conference call next week with one of the agencies that they've not been able to get involved, but they're interested now because from my understanding, and Loretta can maybe speak to that too, that they've been having problems up there with their scheduling. And I think a lot of it is that they just don't have a firm thing. This is the way we need to do this, and we need to get all together. And that, and the message board, they're starting to use the message board. I'm excited about that because they were using that Evite thing, which is crazy. Anyhow.
And then one last question, which is have you ever seen it get to a situation where there were so many conflicts that they couldn't be resolved?
We find with the conflicts and resolving them that the face-to-face meeting that they have is very, very worthwhile. What happens a lot of times, I'll give you a couple examples. We may have a group that's going on Tuesday and they've booked 7 to 3:30. And we may have another group that wants to come in at 3. There's a half an hour overlap between 3 and 3:30. So what happens in that instance when they're both in the same room, one says, well, I'm going to be off the floor in a post-conference from 2:30 to 3:30. So there really isn't a conflict. But it was a person error in putting the request in. Instead of saying 7 to 2:30 with a 2:30 to 3:30 post-conference, they put it in 7 to 3:30 and it created a false overlap. So 99% of the conflicts are resolved in that way. The conflicts that cannot be resolved in that way, they have access to go to the calendar and they can look and see what other locations in San Diego that they have a contract with, because they have to have a contract in order to go to a facility. They can go to the different agencies that they have contracts with and see what's open, and they can adjust their scheduled request to a date that's open in a location that has the clinical that they need.
That's on that public calendar. And we do have a caveat for that. It's like, you might see open slots at that place, but don't go and say, well, I saw an open slot and you're denying me, because maybe they have a reason for that. Often it's maybe a staff development day, some reason that they don't want to have students that day. And so we say, don't overuse that calendar, because that sometimes can burn some bridges.
Is this only for hospital scheduling, or do you do home health or outpatient clinics?
We have home health and outpatient clinics, the San Diego Public Health Department, all their sites are on there. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
San Diego Unified Schools use this as well.
They use
for
it as
their
well. They
sites.
use it a little bit differently in that they have just this unified school district as one thing, and then it used to be that they had the different schools listed, but now they will just put in the comments what school that the student would go to.
Nice.
And preceptorships, that's another thing that they use very much. You saw how many preceptorship requests we have. And for the preceptorships, at one time, they would put in, they wanted 5 preceptors for this hospital at a certain time. Most of the hospitals now have gone to the point of saying each preceptorship should have a separate request. And it's to the advantage of the school, because as soon as you find a preceptorship, you're going to accept that one. But if you're looking for 5 preceptors, you might not answer until you get 5. And so the other thing is part of this tracking business and onboarding, because the trend right now is to have a placement system that can easily move back and forth with a background check for onboarding and all. And that's the big push right now, to have that integration so that the two systems, the background check and the placement system, talk to each other, and it saves lots of work. I know Marlene was at Kaiser, would have piles of paperwork she had to have, but now with some of this electronic onboarding and all, it's eased that.
Yeah, let me address the Complio system. It's not just a background check, it is a whole wealth of data. And what we have is the immunization tracking in there, so the students don't have to submit to the hospital their personal their personal health information. It goes into the Complio database, and I can bring up a student's name and see that they have all their immunizations. I can go in there and see that they've had their annual flu shot. I can go in there and see that they have their CPR card. So there's a lot of data in that Complio system that we used to have hard paper copies in our office every semester. And now what happens is the student uploads all of that to Complio. It's a confidential database. We pull down from Complio, is the student clear or not? And if the student is not cleared, we get a flag. If the student is cleared, then we get that they're cleared. If we get a flag, it shows what the flag is. Is there background check? Is it an immunization that's missing? Is their CPR card out of date? Whatever it is. The other thing nice about Complio is it has taken a huge burden off of the schools, because what happens is the schools have to track all of that as well. And so the schools get a copy of their Complio, and if a student's flu shot is going to expire in a month, the student gets a notification their flu shot needs to be renewed. The school gets a notification their flu shot has to be renewed. They get a notification 2 weeks later. They get it updated. It's now cleared a document. If there's anything, their CPR card, anything that has an outdate on it, the student gets a notification system well in advance of having to provide it, so that they don't have an excuse. No one told me it was going to go away, even though they have the personal copy in their wallet, or should have. So the bottom line is we rarely, Lisa Malloy at our meeting that we had just 2 weeks ago indicated she used to get requests all the time for the students to have to update stuff, and she said, for the last 3 years, I haven't had to track a single student. So it really is a worthwhile system for that. And the two systems now are integrating so that it's a very smooth process.
How long do you retain the information for the students?
When I was at Kaiser, our legal department required we kept it for 7 years. But now I don't have to keep paper copies of it because it's all in the computer system, and all I have to do is bring it up. I used to get requests from our legal department for something on a student, and I would have to go to this warehouse in the sky and try to find those documents. And now I don't have to do that because now they're all readily available online, and ADB keeps them, and they don't have an expiration date on them.
That's great. So my other question would be, a lot of the nurses are first responders. Do you note that, capture that anywhere, with what's going on right now? And we all need to be first responders. We all need to be trained if there's an outbreak. AmeriCorps has these programs for nurses where they volunteer. Oftentimes, we don't have enough volunteers. Is there a way that you can track that, like who's been trained to be first responders, who's gone to simulation trainings, at the health department, in case there is an emergency, that you could actually have a database to actually, recruit some of these nurses?
That's a wonderful agenda item for our next meeting, which is coming up soon.
The other thing we're trying to do in San Diego is standardize the basic things that you need for every hospital to go to. And the fact that Rady Children's Hospital has the strictest things, we have that as the bottom line of what you have to have for your request. And we're trying to get everybody on board, not easy job, so that we have some standard things so that you don't have to worry about this hospital this and this hospital that. And so now, if they go through the Complio thing, it'll be a basic requirements that they have. But then, if you go to a certain hospital, it might tell you this extra thing, a few modules or something else on that. But we're working on that. And as I say, it's been no easy task.
Yeah. As far as our immunizations, we have standardized for the whole community Rady's criteria. And every student has to meet those criteria, and if they meet those, then they're accepted at any facility. And we've done the same thing by standardizing to the American Heart Association CPR card. We do have one exception to that, and that is the military card. But I did a paper, page-by-page comparison, and the military CPR card and the American Hospital Association is the same exact program. They just have two different names on it. So we've accepted that, but there are other agencies that teach basic life support, and we do not accept those. So we've done a really good job in standardizing. So if a student meets the criteria for one hospital, we know they're going to meet the criteria for any other clinical placement they get assigned to.
I know you spoke about the costs, depending how many, what the cost for each school. Your startup costs, how much did you need to start up a program like this? Just the minimum costs?
A lot of volunteer hours and a very small grant.
Yeah, so the program itself.
We did a year for nothing.
The program itself, how much does the program itself cost?
Well, what we base it on what the income is and what the time spent is for the different things we do. And we have to allow money for the webmaster if we have exports we need to add or anything happens to the system.
I'm just looking at it as standpoint because we have some of these communities who aren't as sophisticated as you are.
They can set their own prices.
Right, but sometimes a startup, to actually
Well,
get it started. And I'm looking to possibly maybe some funding opportunities for some of these communities that we really need them to come together and work together.
We
Yeah, and the underserved areas, so-
provide them with a plan of what it would cost us to go and share our information with them. If they choose, and that's nominal, if they choose to adopt our system, we will work with them. Ann does all of this. She works with them to set the system up there. And then, as she already indicated, it's $100 a month to maintain the system, plus the web fee, once they have it up and live.
Yeah, so I'm just looking like for maybe an estimate that you would provide the board with. So again, so we can maybe look at ways of maybe funding these underserved areas where we can actually hire you or pay you or do what we have to do to get them started, to get them talking.
We could put a budget together for that and get it to you, but at this time, I don't think we have those figures at our fingertips.
Thank you.
Do you see this program working on a statewide level?
I think that it's hard to look at a comparison with Nevada and California, to be truthful. Nevada, so few schools, so few agencies.
It doesn't have to be one, but it can be broken up into groups and
Michael,
regions.
in answer to your question, I think that the program could work statewide, but I think it would require a consortium in each location that has it using the same database. So yes, we could teach every location in the state of California what it is and how to use it. And we could set them up so that they could be a user. But they have to have a locally driven consortium. Our success factor is related to the fact that we meet on a regular basis. We listen to what our consumers ask us for. We build into the system all of the requests that we get from them that we get a consensus on, because sometimes we get some requests that are pretty harebrained. And so we standardize the requests that we get a consensus that, yes, this would be better for the consortium, and then we move forward with it. If there was a consortium in each location that functioned in this manner, and I would be very happy to go and help them set up any of these consortia. If we had that set up in each local place, then the system could work for the whole state of California.
I think another thing is that it needs to have some consistent leadership. And I think that's one of the things that's made us, we've been together since 1996.
We're joined at the hip.
Exactly. And the other thing is the person that is the local administrator needs to be somebody that has some knowledge of clinical scheduling from the nursing and allied health education standpoint, not from scheduling people at Jack in the Box. They need to have some idea of how clinical lab groups work and all that kind of thing. And it needs to be somebody that administrator is not something that rolls over
It's
every
okay,
year.
you're safe to say it here. It needs to be a nurse. Yes.
Well, and we really think that it has to be a partnership. It has to be two people, one from service and
From
academia, being the leadership body.
Yeah.
Because that way you have somebody that has the support and respect of everybody from their contingency, and that way the two of them, like we say, we do everything on collaboration, and we do everything on consensus.
And when you say
if
collaboration,
you have that mutual drive for your leadership.
and when you say collaboration, you're talking about the academic institutions here all getting together and meeting, and service also.
Well, they need to be.
That's right.
They need to meet together, and that was the thing that when we
So that's
first
what
got
happens.
together,
My question is, that's what happens here in San Diego, right? Academia, service, they come together and meet, correct?
Yes.
Right.
So that's how they make it work, and that's why it's been so successful, because of their ability to meet, come to a consensus, come to an agreement, hash it out, in those meetings, and then all the students get successfully placed here in San Diego.
Exactly.
So that's why the program here is so successful.
True.
And so the other places that are having issues around the state, this would be a good program for them and it would work well for them.
And we would be very happy to share with them.
Yeah, and so again, my question was because I want to explore the possibilities of us, with your help, whatever is necessary to actually go into some of these areas and maybe get something started.
Can I tell you a funny story?
Yeah.
When we first started working with Fresno, it was a request for a grant application. So we filled it out and we did the budget on it based on one of the airlines. And when we got approved, we got the highest score, we got accepted, we started our process, and the airline that we had based our budget on went out of business. And so we were
Then we had to start flying expensive airlines.
So we would probably be a little bit more thoughtful in putting the budget together.
So did you do one in Fresno?
The Fresno system
San
is our
Joaquin
system.
Valley,
Oh,
that's Fresno, the whole Central Valley.
Because they rave about theirs too. We had a board member that would talk about the.
You know
Versus
Pilar,
ours.
Well,
you know Pilar,
Pilar,
right?
Pilar,
Yeah.
yeah.
All the time.
Yeah, Pilar's the person that we worked with all along up there.
Oh, okay.
So we desperately need it in the Central Valley and Bakersfield, Kern County.
Right now, the Inland Empire has contacted me.
And we want to be able to help you and help the other communities as well. Just have to figure out how.
Okay.
Do you see legislation in the future with something like this?
I
Or
don't
could you
know
see
that
it?
it
Could
would
you
re-
envision it, some legislation like this?
I don't envision it requiring legislation. I envision it requiring thoughtful consideration and adapting to it.
Okay.
I think if you mandate it, then you're dragging people's feet to the fire. Whereas if you do it collaboratively and willingly, then you get acceptance. You're always happier with something that you've chosen instead of something that's foisted on you.
I have one more question. When you're talking about areas like Long Beach and then the one you've done years ago, Fresno, once you set it up, did they take ownership of it? And did you step out or do you still consult or review to make sure it's being done correctly?
They run their consortium, and the only thing they do is they pay their annual monthly fee and their web fees.
Well, and then if they, like this morning, I got a call from Nevada. They had an issue that they wanted to discuss with me. So then we talked about that. That's the support kind of thing. When they changed administrators recently, I flew to Las Vegas and worked with that new person because they needed to know what the process was and how to, more than a website demonstration. The only thing I didn't charge hourly for that because I figured that was what their $100 a month really went to, but they did pay my airfare. So I say, as Marlene said, we're not in it to make money. We're here to educate people for the healthcare industry.
Great.
Mike,
Thank you.
are we done? I don't have a question. I just want to thank you. I purposely didn't ask any questions because I asked a bunch at that NEC meeting
We
in
remember.
December.
I'm going to pass out the
And I
handout
think
to
we
you.
got the point here. There's a lot of interest in this, and you have shown that your system has the capacity to handle more, but it just requires people to are willing to work to make it work. And we have a lot of areas that we think that this could work and help our system and help us out and help their students as well in their success. And so I just want to appreciate that. Also, I need that Loretta Melby. I know you had a lot to do with getting them here and working on this, and I wanted to thank you as well.
Thank you. I worked with them when I was a program director, both in private colleges as well as community colleges. So it's great to see them do good work. I think one thing that was kind of maybe not emphasized enough is that this is a clinical placement a year in advance. So the student, the academia puts in their request for future clinical placements, projecting 1 year out, and then they get approval, and then the students have a set schedule that they can rely on unless there's major changes a year out. And so this is done on an annual basis, which is wonderful. You can also pull reports and see where the students are, how many students are in each location, what schools are utilizing what facilities, and it's really a great source of information.
Anything else? Thank you for having us.
Thank you for coming down here, Marlene.
No problem.
I really appreciate you.
Did they know you were on the board, Michael?
She knows everything about what I do. Yes, she does. She keeps tabs on me thoroughly.
Even Christmas party together.
Even Christmas parties. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Moving right along, item 5.0, public items for public comment for items not on the agenda or for items for the future agenda.
Good afternoon. Great job they did, because I've been a member of Orange County Long Beach for years, and we've never had anything quite like that, and their computer system is fabulous. So I come to you today, as I have many times before. My name's Judy Corliss. As you know, I was a former board member, and I've mentioned how we need to increase simulation over the many years after the study was done out of the National Council of State Boards of Nursing, which was evidence-based information that showed that there was no difference in the outcomes of the students with 25 or 50% simulation. And there was no difference in their NCLEX scores. Now we're in a crisis nationwide, and mostly, to this board, a true crisis in California. Being prepared is of the utmost importance, and daily now we're getting calls, and I get them, and I'm not running a school, about students being sent out and they're not able to be taking their clinical rotations at hospitals. And some of the schools are actually just shutting down that clinical component for the moment because their school cannot take the students. Some of the reasons that are going to come about are concurrent teaching, subject matter. They won't be able to do that. If they're being taught pediatrics in didactic and they can't go to clinical pediatrics, that's going to delay their graduation. It's going to delay financial aid. It's going to roll down to the subject matter experts being laid off, such as peds, OB, mental health, et cetera. And that will delay their graduations and not to mention their financial aid. I propose increasing the simulation to 50% for a period of 1 year and then study the outcomes. It will allow students to continue on track and ensure graduates as well as prevent student financial hardships. Because they've taken off work, many of them, and as you know, one of the concerns of this board has been their financial outlay. This is all validated by numerous research studies, and you all know the value of evidence-based research. Even China is ready for this global health emergency. The Hope School of Nursing is equipped to handle students across in their state-of-the-art simulation center in Wuhan. And I brought you information about that. They've done this now to they knew a crisis was coming and they're prepared for it, and the students are in it right now. They prepared for this disaster many years, and we may eventually need to send out nurses to them because currently in China there are 3 RNs to 1,000 population. In their country, 90% of their faculty have come to the US for training. So they are good nurses over there, but they have such a population they can't take care of them with these types of crises. So here we may be training more to send there, and we may be training more of them here to send back. It's time for the BRN to ask for an executive order to increase simulation to 50%. As a significant number of the states already use this across the nation from the NCSBN report that I had given you previously. I have a letter also from our prior BRN board member, President Janine Graves, who sits on the NUAC committee with all of you who are participating in that. She's been trying to accomplish getting this increased simulation for several years without success, and now we feel is the time to get this going. I hate to see something be a decision based on a crisis, but we're in it now daily. Students are sent out, and you all have been getting the reports as well. So I want to give you a copy of my letter. I'm going to give you a copy of Janine's letter. Janine Graves was our prior Board of Registered Nursing president. She is a nurse that currently works at Mercy and at Sutter. She's an operating room nurse, and she is a preceptor to many nursing students, so she's on the clinical side of what's happening. And then also I'll give you the article that's at the epicenter of the coronavirus, A Generation of Hope Nurses Fighting Back, and it tells what they have done with their simulation to alleviate the students from being sent out without any clinical rotation ability. So I'll pass these out to you, and I appreciate you guys listening to me every time about simulation. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
You're welcome.
Michael?
I do have a public comment. Sorry, but it's probably more interesting than that. Anyway, good afternoon, Mr. President, board members. I'm Dr. Robin Nelson. I'm the Dean of the College of Nursing at West Coast University. I'm also a board member of the California Association of Colleges of Nursing. And to follow Judy Corliss's comments are very timely in that the Board of Nursing, as it states when you first open up the website, says that you're tasked with, the safety and of the public in terms of their health and preparing the highest quality or ensuring the highest quality nurses. And the COVID-19 issue is impacting on academia's ability to continue our preparation of our students. When I left Irvine this morning, I had 9 agencies that were not going to take any of our students over the next 3 weeks to an undetermined length of time. 212 students are being impacted by this inability to complete their clinical. And they have about 50 hours remaining. And this kind of relates to the questions that Executive Officer Melby has asked for us to report, which we are working on that. But about 50 hours remain for them to complete in the next 3 weeks. And it will not be possible if they can't go to the clinical area. So to echo Judy's request, I believe it's important at this time to implement a change in the 75% direct care regulation and allow the schools that are preparing the highest quality of nurses possible to be able to utilize not only simulation, but they have other ideas of things they can do that will be quality education and will enable the students to meet their objectives for their course. I mean, we have a term that ends in 4 weeks, and how to get 50 hours in for the students is going to be a challenge, and we do not want to have to hold them back. It'll impact the next group that's coming up in the next term, and the students are wanting to become contributors to the healthcare of California. So I want to ditto the request to please remove the 75% direct care requirement. Thank you.
Are there any further public comments for items not on the agenda? Seeing none, I guess this adjourns our meeting for March 11th, 2020. Thank you all for coming.